This is the April 2nd, 2025 meeting of the IT Committee. I'll call the meeting to order and we'll take a roll call. Bob Hassinger,
I'm here.
Mark Clark,
We have to hear you. No, we have to hear you. That's
Mark,
part of the law.
I'm here. Sorry,
What's
I went
better when you're off
double
mute?
mute. Double mute.
All right, Dave Robbins is here and Bob Carroll is in the process of joining. All right, we're just doing a roll call. Bob Carroll, is Bob Carroll present?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
What's
Yeah.
that?
Yes.
Yeah, we hear you, Bob.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, my headphones weren't showing up on the audio thing, yeah.
And joining us tonight from the town staff, town administrator's office is Assistant Town Administrator William Blake.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Hello.
So we'll begin with our usual agenda. Public input. If there is anybody from the public attending this meeting now and wishes to speak to a matter that's not already on the agenda, now would be the time. We do not have any Zoom attendees. And unless one of us has a matter that should count as public input, I think I will take it that there is no public input and proceed to momentarily distracted. Proceed to our agenda. The first agenda item was an update on the matter of the insecure web links, which we've talked about at our previous meeting. It was originally brought up back in February. And I will note for the record, I kind of dropped the ball on that for a while, but I did send out an email to William and Evan a couple of days ago raising the issue. And I think I copied you all on the email. And I heard from William by email this afternoon that they are pursuing forwarding the issue to Civic Plus. If, anything else you want to comment on at this point on that, William?
Just that it's been kicked over to them and they have already responded. They asked for some screenshots, which I provided to them from the committee. So they are actively working on that issue.
Very good.
Good.
And I think as we in our meetings previously, our discussions are we've commented that sometimes we don't notice that, or people might not notice that, but for those who do pay attention, and getting a warning about an insecure link to the town website is at the very least it's a bad look, and it may, as I said in the email, may put someone off. On my computer, for reasons I have not been able to figure out, when I open that insecure link in Apple Mail, it somehow transforms it into a secure link by the time it gets to my web browser. So depending on which method I use for reading those emails, I either do or do not see the insecure link. But
Yep. And
anyway,
so I watched the entirety of last meeting for this committee, and I tried it in Google. It worked as a secure link for me, but I think Bob Carroll, you pointed out that if you bump it over to other browsers like Edge or Firefox, that's where you start to run into issues. So I raised that point with Civic Plus directly.
Yep.
But if you look at the link that actually goes out, you can see that it's just HTTP. So that means that the browser is doing its thing and it's not actually in the code, the HTML.
Yep. And so, yeah, I think certainly if the ball is now in Civic Plus's court, we will see what they do in response. We'll sort of if nothing else, we'll expect to hear more at our next meeting,
if not sooner.
if not sooner. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's
I'll be-
basically, anything else on that particular issue? I think we kind of beat that one almost to death at our last meeting.
Now, I'd just be curious, anything you hear back, like this magic transforming from insecure to secure. Well, any clues about where that's coming from or how that's working? The last thing you want is for your browser to be hiding an insecure link. And I don't know, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I spent quite a bit of time digging through, trying to find out where the transformation was taking place on my end, on my computer. And I just, I couldn't nail it down.
So you using Opera?
Yeah, I was using I'm on a Mac, and the Apple Mail client seems to transform that link into a secure link before it ever gets to the browser. I was trying to see if maybe Safari was doing something to it, but no. And in fact, no matter which browser I point it to, Apple Mail seems to transform the link into an HTTPS link by the time it gets to the browser. If I'm using something other than Apple Mail to read the mail and click on the link, it gets to the browser as an insecure link.
Yeah. It doesn't, I don't think anything converts an insecure link to a link. Might edit the text of the link, but it doesn't make an insecure link secure.
Yeah, for reasons I was not able, I spent at least an hour or two digging, trying to dig through it for reasons I could not understand. In the email, it is an HTTP link, but when I click on the link, by the time the browser sees it, it's an HTTPS link. I don't know where that transformation happens. Anyway, and without trying to figure that out any further, I guess let's move on here. The next agenda item is just a general update from the town administrator. If there is anything that Evan gave you, William, to pass on to the committee. I asked Evan, and he didn't have anything that he passed back to me to pass on to the committee.
Nope, I spoke to him this afternoon. He still did not have anything to pass on.
Yeah, Evan's sort of busy with the budget these days.
Only a little bit.
So yeah. So that moves us on to the main topic of the meeting this evening, which is we've been labeling it as an IT policy discussion, but as we've been discussing it over the last several meetings, it really seems to encompass more than just strictly speaking IT policies. And so but I don't know, William, if you have anything that you wanted to kick off the discussion with on that topic based on what you and Evan may have talked about.
So only one thing I wanted to touch on, again, watching last meeting, the discussion was had about whether or not new employees receive the IT policies for review. They do. They get those through employee forwards during onboarding, so they do have to read those and sign off on them both electronically and physically. So we do have the opportunity, any additional IT policies that may be created, we can always throw those in there for review as well.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So
beyond that, we do have a general template for policies that's already standardized. So for me personally, I feel like it's just a matter of finding out what the committee would like to see first and moving in that direction.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that that does answer some of the questions we've had or the topics we talked about. But so I think from my perspective, at least, I kind of we kind of need to talk about how we want to proceed. We've got, an IT policy, sort of a kind of covers a number of topics. We've got basically one IT policy document. in sort of another IT related, I think we have a social media policy.
Yep.
But that's really that's pretty much what we have right now. And we've talked about it at several meetings recently. We've got kind of a list of other additional policy topics that may be worthwhile. And so one direction that we can go with this is to take the policies that we have and the policies we have plus a list of potential policy topics and try to nail down what we want to address in policy. But as we've discussed over the past several meetings, we may want to be considering policies in the context of a somewhat larger framework, something along the lines of a strategic plan or the cybersecurity framework, some sort of a broader context that will help us to guide the policy development, help to identify what policies are important, what else we might need to, we might want to have in place to inform some of the policies. Bob Carroll had mentioned before, sent an email to me earlier today about the Commonwealth's Community Compact, where they have a set of best practice areas that may be worth looking at. It reminded me that some years back, somewhere around the 2015, 2016 timeframe, we did a community compact with the state on business continuity. I don't know. I know the committee talked about it some. The two Bobs will remember that, I think. I don't think we ever saw the final result of that. I found a couple of documents on my computer that related to it, but neither one of them. The one of them was sort of an initial, an agreement between the town and the state on pursuing that. Another was a document that seemed to be sort of a work in progress on the business continuity, but I don't recall where that ended up. And that may be long enough ago that it's at best might be somewhat out of date. Sure, there have to be records on that somewhere in the office, William, but I don't know where that is. But there are some other best practice areas that may be worth pursuing through the community compact. What do they call it? The community compact cabinet.
Mhm.
So it's probably we probably, let me see. Did I miss anything on my notes? Yeah, I think we want to try to set some sort of expectations, or how do we want to proceed through this topic? Is it enough for right now just to take a few policy topics and work on that, or do we want to? Oh, the other thing I think I mentioned the idea of some sort of an IT strategic plan. I did find something in this committee's notes, or that was in my folder about this committee. I don't remember where it came from. There was a copy of an IT strategic plan from Nantucket. So that was developed by an outside consultant who looked at their IT organization and the state of things, and had some recommendations for kind of a longer term strategic plan for various things that they can. And I think at one of our recent meetings, we were wondering whether William, you or Evan had any contacts in other towns that might have something like a strategic plan for their IT that might be a model that we could use. So that I guess I'd like for us to figure out where we want to go with all of that. There's potentially a lot there, and I don't want to bite off more than we can chew, but at the very least, do we have a starting point that we can say we're gonna move forward in this, and this? Any thoughts, anybody? I'm kind of rambling on here. Sorry about that.
So, Dave, if I can just respond to two of the things you said.
Yes.
One, in regards to other communities, we have a ton of contacts across Worcester County, and even for someplace like Nantucket, it's as easy as just sending them an email. I've personally never had a community say no when we've asked for a document or an example policy. As for, and so we'd be happy to do that. As for sort of a long-term strategic plan, we will be going back out to bid in the next couple of months for our IT supplier. That contract is up. So that's something we could always roll into the bid documents if that's something the committee would have appetite for.
Anybody have any thoughts on that?
So this is definitely one of my hot buttons, and without the roadmap, right, where you're gonna go, you're just kind of like, cherry picking, right, and picking at this and that. So I think you need that framework, and you need that strategy to figure out. And I gotta believe it. Similar towns with similar demographics, right, and similar needs, that they're probably pretty standard, at least the table of contents and the sections, and that, we could just basically lift and repurpose it for Grafton without, a whole lot of work, right? And, let me ask kind of a loaded question. So, in the modern world, especially now, AI is really big, right? Is there any guidance or policy on what employees can do and use, like ChatGPT or Gemini and
None that I have seen, but I also haven't looked too deep. So it might be out there and it's just not mainstream in the municipal world.
yeah, because that anything you post in there really, the safe zone it really has to be public information, right? Not anything that's related to the town or whatever, or anything with privacy concerns. And we certainly wouldn't want, town employees engaging and using those tools, right? To do any of functions or part of their job. So, because like Google, Gemini, it'll go in and I think you guys are all Outlook, right? And Exchange and Microsoft. Yeah. So there's this pilot. Do you guys use that at all to like summarize email, to do meetings? I know
No.
Microsoft pushes that.
Copilot, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there probably should be, that's kind of a new and evolving area. And that would be something, where I would imagine the town would want to come out, right, with some guidelines on, that it's all verboten or some of it, right?
Mhm.
Or whatever, whatever is usual and customary, I guess would be the guidance there. And that you could fit that right into you. I think at one time there was an acceptable use policy, right?
Like an acceptable use for technology in general.
Yeah,
Yep. So that's the one that new employees have to review.
right. So that would be kind of the natural place to tuck that in there.
So just a quick glance, Boston and Lebanon, New Hampshire have generative AI use policies.
Right. So that would be something you could, I would think, lift, right? They probably just have a couple of
Yep.
paragraphs,
Yeah, that's
prohibitive.
yeah, that's a good example of a policy topic that wouldn't have come up 3 or 4 years ago.
Exactly.
It is now very definitely something relevant. So in terms of roadmap, which maybe not quite the same thing as you might call a strategic plan, but a roadmap is perhaps a little bit more informal, but it's a description of where we, what we would need or want to do both in terms of policies and maybe a little bit more generally about how we, how we manage our IT operation. And some of that probably could be reasonably included with our next IT service contract. Don't know.
So yeah,
much
that's where I was kind of go with this because you brought it up, William. So in the next RFP, are you guys putting out there, more of these types of services or more, what you had help desk, break fix, upgrades, patching?
The document as it stands right now is an extension of what we're already doing. So the help desk, break fix, having somebody on site 2 or 3 days a week to assist staff when issues come up.
Yeah, so it's not so much sort of long term.
So that's a gap,
Right.
right? We don't have that leadership and governance, right? And, essentially what a CIO would be doing or a CTO. Because you're just kind of like picking around the edges here instead of looking at the big picture.
Yeah, we're at a, compared to some communities, we're at a perhaps a bit of a disadvantage because we don't have dedicated IT staff. We don't have our own IT department as such.
Right.
A lot of towns do. They have an IT department at least minimally with an IT director, or it's not someone who's basically on the town staff and ultimately takes the primary responsibility for the IT operation. Very probably oftentimes contracting out for the day-to-day operations and maintenance and for equipment installations, but somebody on town staff who is sort of the one who is primarily responsible overall for the operation. We don't have that. I mean, William and Evan
So what does the
sort of
school
have that
do?
responsibility, but it's
What does Jay do?
The school has an IT department. They have dedicated in-house IT staff.
And do they have someone that kind of fits that role? Like a CIO, CTO?
I'm not overly familiar with their organizational structure, but yes, I believe so.
Yeah, I think Neil Strahan, and Neil is still there as far as ours. He was anyway, but he was kind of more or less an IT director.
Right. And that kind of leads into the compact, the community compact. One of the leading practices or recommended practices, shared services, right? So is there any appetite for that between, the school departments and the municipal side of the house?
We haven't had that conversation in a couple of years. We could always restart it. I know 4 or 5
with the budget, it's very timely.
Yep,
Mhm.
4-ish, 5-ish years ago, kind of when I first came on board, I know there wasn't an appetite, but a lot can change in that time.
Yeah, Bob and Bob, you guys, I think remember that a number of years ago, we did try to collaborate with the school department, and
Yeah, I think we had some meetings. I don't think it got that far.
Yeah.
There was a lot of pushback and why we couldn't do it, right?
yeah, I think to the best that I can remember, the issues included the differences in the technology infrastructure between the two parts of the organization, and the amount of time that the school department, their IT staff it turned out they didn't have sufficient time really to devote to the municipal side of the IT. Now that may or may not have changed. That was quite a number of years ago now. It's probably worth at least circling back and exploring the possibility.
Yeah, because the landscape's changed, right?
Yeah.
There's not as much, we don't have the servers, right? We're not doing Ignite. Most of the stuff is pushed up to the cloud. And the compute part, right? What do they have all over there? They're Chromebooks or Pixel books. Is that what they're using?
Chromebook
Tablets, right?
and iPads.
Oh, they still have iPads?
I think so. Yeah.
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 As I recall, they were very much oriented around the Google infrastructure, whereas on Evan's side of the house, it's more around Microsoft 365. So
Right.
that's probably, for lack of a better term, an irreconcilable difference. But I don't really know, and I don't know what Neil and company or whoever is currently occupying that position in the school side, whether what they might be able to do. But yeah, particularly in these, we're not going to hire an IT director anytime soon.
Right. No, I
So,
get that.
So at least it would be worthwhile to have some discussions with Jay, and sort of try to basically take another look and see what the possibilities might be. And it may turn out to be that there's really nothing we can do there, but it would be good for at least for us to be able to see what we can get. Maybe nothing, maybe some good ideas. I don't know, but that would be something. Sounds like it'd be something worth revisiting at least.
Yeah, I'd be happy to have a conversation with Jay this week and next week whenever we can get time.
Yep.
If it doesn't make it in this budget, it's something still to look, because there's a lot of looking for ways to squeeze, right? And maybe between more need to find a way and changing technology, maybe we get a little more progress, towards some.
Yeah, because just looking at the website real quick, there's like 7 or 8 people on staff over there. Now, some of them are doing, I'm saying, reporting and submitting stuff to the state and all that. But I mean, definitely worth at least having a conversation, right?
Yeah, it's certainly true that their IT operations serves as a very different user community from what ours would be. They've got something like, I don't know, 400 or 500 staff and 3,000 students, and all the IT processes that deal with teaching staff and students and all that. So it's a very different user community from what the what Evan's side of the house would have.
I do wonder though, it may be a question of skill sets. You got all those people who use the tools that schools using versus we use different ones. May not. You may have. I had the feeling at some point that we heard that way back when you were talking.
Yeah, that does ring a bell. Anyway, it's
gotta ask.
Yeah. So that is right. So there is a topic for some further exploration. The idea of reaching out to other communities to see what they have for roadmaps and strategic plans. Something that will help to inform us as to what we need to do. What we might need to do that we're not currently doing, as far as overall planning for IT, as far as particularly the topic of policies comes to mind. Having a better idea of what our longer term roadmap and vision is would help us to focus more on the policy work that we need to do.
So I was just looking on their site, and they have a technology plan for 23 through 27. So even our schools has it. If you want, I don't know, David, can you enable comments or chat on here? I'll paste the link in there.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can do that while we are in session.
Yeah, what, email is my friend.
Okay, I'll send it over. But yeah, I mean, this, it's definitely geared towards schools and, what they do and,
Yeah,
their whole
so
thing. But I mean, the fact is they have.
yes. So while the details may be different for them and the overall structure of the kinds of things that are included in that 5-year plan
Right.
are are going to be similar to what we ought to have for a 5-year plan for. I keep wanting to call it our side. I guess it is sort of our side of the organization, but even though it's one town, but yeah,
Yeah, so they say Chromebooks.
yeah, yeah. But
Oh, I don't know where and they talk about replacing a bunch of switching and infrastructure. And they've got more audio visual, that kind of gear over there, obviously the smart boards and all that stuff.
yeah, but some of
And
the
they've got desktop computers, 30 that they're gonna replace 30 of those. So I mean they've
yeah, I
got
think
strategic and tactical things in here.
yep, and I can remember Evan having mentioned fairly, in one of our recent meetings that he's he's been pretty comfortable that we have a pretty solid plan for that kind of for replacing and updating laptops and desktops. I think
Yeah.
he was a little bit less confident that we have a good sort of a long-term plan for server updates and replacements, but I think servers is one of the topics that Evan thought we needed to flesh out a little bit more in our long-term plans. But yeah, so it's good. Thank you for finding that, Bob. That is a very close to home example of what we might be looking for. Similar examples from other towns of the same sort of thing, a 5-year technology plan, covering, the year-to-year stuff, the regular upgrades and replacements, plus longer term goals and directions. Yeah, so I think if we had mm, several examples of that, I think that would help to put together the right sort of a plan for Evan's organization. And within that, that would, it's like I said before, I think that would uh, be of some help in guiding some policy development. So, and I mean, Evan had, sort of diverting to the more specific topic of policies. Evan had obtained policies from some other towns, and he had said this must go back a year or two that the policies he got from Groton, he thought that was a fairly good set of policies. Although we talked about that a little bit of one of our last couple of meetings, and there are some details there that some of their policies wouldn't be applicable to us. But again, identifying policy topics that we need to address. I think we have some ideas. I think that we could work on even before we develop that 5-year or longer term direction. So
You're Blake W. William.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, they're definitely Google shop. I can tell by looking at this policy and the interaction. That's just this all Google Workforce. So it sounds like maybe they've gone away from the whole, Apple
Mm.
space and world, and now they're all Google. They make it essentially free.
yeah, I
The
kind of
whole
remember that
ecosystem.
a number of years ago, the schools had done a large buy of iPads, and then more recently, I think I do remember hearing them that they're moving away from iPads and onto Chromebooks.
Right. And they probably don't even buy them. They probably lease them and flip them. Because those Chromebooks have like a planned obsolescence, you gotta upgrade them so many times.
Yeah. Yeah. My grandkids in the Franklin schools, they were all on Chromebooks.
No. All right, you guys have it. It's in the ether, on its way.
Thank you.
All right, so can I take away from this discussion at this point that we've got a couple of initiatives that we're going to go on. One is to reopen the conversation with the schools and explore whatever opportunities there may be for collaboration or shared services. That we've got one example, and then William can reach out to other towns for comparable examples of 5-year plans or roadmaps for IT. And at this point, do we want to say let's pursue those avenues before we get too deeply into specific policies? Or is there some specific policy work we think we should be proceeding with? Right.
Well, we know acceptable use. I mean, everyone has that.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
I mean, if you want to take that one on too, David, because that was not going anywhere.
Yeah, right. That's something that's not heavily dependent upon the specific technologies that we're going to be using, or how we expect the technology to evolve or change over time. Acceptable use, as we touched on earlier, though, there are some things that probably now belong in an acceptable use policy that didn't used to. That may
Right.
continue to evolve, but if we can, for example, look at the policy we have, which is it covers acceptable use and other things, other topics.
Right.
But we can look at the acceptable use component of that compared to some of the other policies that were posted on the SharePoint. They included some acceptable use, and think about maybe come prepared in our next meeting to recommend some updates to the acceptable use policies. Is that the direction that you want to go in?
We certainly can. Is that something you can share, William?
Yes, for sure.
Okay. And what do you guys use? Is that like a Word document?
It's a PDF on the website, but I can send everybody the link.
Okay.
I think-
If you throw it in that folder that Evan has, we have he provisioned us it looks like a
the,
OneDrive,
Yep, I can do that.
Yeah,
I will do
throw it in-
both just for
throw it
everybody's
in there.
convenience.
and if you could either on your end or I have Office, you convert it to something that we could collaborate. Word is fine. Is Acrobat PDFs not so friendly for that?
Okay.
And then we can make, kind of like what David, we do it with the master planning, right? You put in comments and make suggested edits. How we would go through that with Fiona? Well, probably how you guys do all your decisions, right? For planning board and everything.
Yeah, what we've done for I'm thinking both of what we do in planning. Basically, Fiona will post we'll post a document like a draft decision.
Right.
We will each review that offline, and then at the meeting where we deliberate on the decision, we'll share our comments. But basically sharing comments within the committee in between meetings would be considered a deliberation and violation of open meeting law. So we have to be careful about commenting back and forth in between meetings.
I
But,
think most of what I've seen has been edits that Fiona and maybe the applicant have provided. And some of them
Right,
have
but
kind of
we're-
been rather hard to.
But we're
follow.
not, this isn't a decision, right?
Right.
No one, we're not that kind of a body. So this is
Yeah.
just purely creating a document, right?
Yeah, so just, I mean, typically we've, on the planning board, and I'm thinking too of, we're kind of a similar situation with the master plan working group where we have documents that we, are shared with the group. And, we review those individually in between meetings. And typically we've been sharing those as PDFs. PDFs are sometimes difficult to comment on. Sharing it as sharing a Word document, and then each of us individually, editing the Word document with change tracking, and then bringing those
Right.
back together. That's something that could be done.
Well, yeah, and you could do it right in it. And then like I would
Yeah.
see yours, you would see mine, and everyone can read through it.
Yeah, I guess that kind of collaborative editing, is that allowed, right? Or would we have to make a separate copy for each person and then combine them after?
I
Yeah,
think we would need to make a separate copy and then consolidate. I think if you were all working on the same document, that might constitute deliberation under
yes,
the open meeting law.
right. That we would want to avoid. But yes, if we distributed a Word document and each one of us edited the Word document,
Then
preferably
someone
with
has
change
got
tracking, although so whatever you can work
look at-
around that, but yeah. And I know I have at times when, again, going back to how we've done things on planning board, with, in some cases, Fiona or Natalia shared send me a Word document, and I've marked it up with changes and sent it back to them. That's collaboration. The collaboration between a board member and staff is not an open meeting law issue. But I know I think on occasion, Fiona and Natalia and I have collaborated in via change tracking in a Word document. But again, it's just sending a copy of the Word document, doing the edits, and sending it back.
Okay, well, I'm sure we can get this piece sorted out, so.
I will send it to each of you as a Word document. And if there are suggested edits, feel free to send it back to me with track changes and I can consolidate it for the next meeting.
Okay, that works.
All right,
Thank you.
so are we all set as far as this work is going for now? We've got 3 things. Talk with Jay about collaboration and shared services to whatever extent that might turn out to be feasible. Collect 5-year plans, strategic plans, roadmaps, whatever you want to call them. We've got the one from the school department. We can collect reach out to some other towns that are kind of comparable to us. You get some more examples of that. And then suggest changes for the acceptable use policy. Is that everything?
So are you gonna call them? William, is that how you do it, or you just do it by email?
We do it by email.
Uh,
Yeah, we have a list of comparable communities by population, by budget, by a whole bunch of different things, and then we've got
So I
some
know
large-
they used to have a listserv with all different, you had like all the town administrators had a listserv, and then you had the tech guys had a listserv. Do they do that anymore? No.
MMA may still run one of those, but we have sort of
You
just
just-
adopted the practice of reaching out directly.
And you just email them back and forth.
Yep.
Okay.
So, all right, are we set with all of that for the moment? We feels more like we have a more definite plan forward than we've been talking about for the last several meetings. But yeah, I think, I think we're at a point where we wanted to sort of nail down a couple of specific items to work on as we move forward.
And when you said you were gonna do something with that RFP, what's your timing for that?
Hoping to finalize it and get that publicized within or before the end of April.
Oh, okay. Because I was gonna say you could. I know in the past, Evan has sent it out in a similar manner for comments and feedback. I was gonna suggest do that at our next meeting, but that wouldn't be till May. So
Does the committee always meet the first Wednesday,
yeah,
or does it kind of shift a
Yeah,
little bit?
that's been our regular schedule is first Wednesday.
Okay. Yeah, I think that we can push it that extra week to 10 days to get the committee's feedback.
so that'd be the 7th, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I think we saw the last 2 or 3, right? Anyway, the RFPs.
I could only speak to the last one. We've only done one during my tenure in Grafton.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, if I remember right, back in Evan's first year here, I think, he went out to CMD sort of on an ad hoc basis because there wasn't time to do a formal RFP, and then the following year we did the RFP, and now that RFP is up for renewal.
Mhm.
So, all right. So we'll look at reviewing the RFP next month and following up on the other items that we've talked about. And then we'll continue to move along from there. And for tonight, is there anything else on the IT policy and related matters topic? We've got a path. We've got a work plan here. That's good. So if there's nothing else, then our next agenda item is previous meeting minutes. When I was preparing the minutes for tonight from the March meeting, I noticed that I had missed out on something that I was supposed to write into the minutes for the February meeting. So I've got a revised February meeting minutes for approval and March meeting minutes for approval.
I move we approve both.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Carroll,
Carol's aye.
Mr. Clark,
Aye.
Mr. Hassinger,
Aye.
and Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. Just for the record, who seconded that? Was that Amar or Bob?
It was Bob.
All right, and our agenda always includes a possible executive session, but I'm not aware of any topic tonight that requires an executive session. So
I move we
Make a
adjourn.
motion, we adjourn.
Seconded.
all right, moving and seconded that this meeting be adjourned. Mr. Carroll,
Aye.
Mr. Clark,
Aye.
Mr. Hassinger,
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. We are adjourned. Thank